buckle up, because this is going to be a real good one.
Was Blake Lively's PR lawyers, the lawyers for the PR company, didn't want full access to what is discoverable between Blake Lively and other celebrities.
And the wild claims coming from the set of It Ends With Us, which I am reliably informed is a movie. Is Taylor Swift to blame? What does she have to do with that?
Actress Blake Lively and her actor husband Ryan Reynolds want to keep their messages with seemingly their A-list friends out of the hands of the public.
Justin Baldoni is not paying his legal bills, which are hefty.
Hollywood's latest legal battle has turned vicious. Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds are gunning for Justin Baldoni's financial ruin, pulling every trick they can to claim millions at stake. With shady PR stunts in play and Taylor Swift caught in the middle, this isn't just a courtroom fight. It's an all-out celebrity smear campaign. As explosive evidence emerges and legal teams go head-to-head, the stakes have never been higher. It's a war of power, reputation, and revenge. Who's telling the truth? Who's coming out on top? And who will be left to pick up the pieces?
I know this gets overused now, but she did FAFO. Like, she thought she could blame all of her negative press on him. He's a weakling. She's Blake Lively with Ryan Reynolds, her dragon. And she decided, I can't take 1 month worth of negative press, which she got, generated, she says, by him. He says, by you and your badness. And she's so thin-skinned, look what happens to you. Look what happened to poor Jay Cal even on this show. People get picked on when they're in the public eye, right? Like, just Google Megyn Kelly, you'll see terrible articles about me. It's part of being in the public eye. She's just used to being Hollywood's golden girl, and she had such thin skin that after having a couple negative things happen to her for a month, she had to blame him. She decided to blame him, and boy, did she open up a hornet's nest and learn, be careful what you wish for, because now you've got the fight you asked for, and you're not winning.
The ongoing feud between Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and Justin Baldoni has exploded into a high-stakes legal and financial war, with accusations flying and reputations hanging in the balance. What started as a dispute over the film It Ends With Us has now spiraled into a drama of power, influence, and potential financial devastation. Insider sources reveal that Lively and Reynolds are hell-bent on driving Baldoni to bankruptcy, deploying every legal maneuver and PR tactic at their disposal.
Today, Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni's legal teams met in court to discuss a proposed protective order marking the latest chapter in their explosive legal feud. And the hearing comes after months of back and forth accusations, leaked evidence, a public relations war that has certainly captivated Hollywood, and I would say a lot of us here on social media and online and everywhere. Now, really quick refresher about what we're talking about here. So we have Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively. They starred in It Ends With Us, a film based on a book of the same name. And after filming had wrapped and the premiere had happened, Lively filed a complaint with the California Civil Rights Department saying that Baldoni and others within his company, Wayfarer Studios, made her uncomfortable on set, that she was harassed, and that Baldoni even sexually harassed her. And she alleges that she tried to voice her concerns, but then they turned around and retaliated against her, and then used a PR and digital team to trash her in the press and on social media. And the whole thing was written up for a piece in the New York Times, who Baldoni then sued, saying that they had trusted Lively's side of the story as fact and had barely reached out to him or his team for comment, and even didn't do the proper due diligence and didn't provide context and the full story. This again, all according to him.
At the center of the dispute is Blake Lively's accusation that Justin Baldoni, who played a significant role in producing It Ends With Us, engaged in misconduct that harmed her career. However, Baldoni and his legal team are vehemently rejecting the claims, arguing that Lively's allegations are not only baseless, but also part of a larger effort to manipulate the industry narrative.
Hey, look, celebrities are subject to the same standards as everybody else. So just because they're celebrities doesn't mean they get to hide their texts.
Yeah, if I have to turn my texts over in a case and they're very private to me, why shouldn't these A-listers who are text messaging back and forth with Ryan Reynolds or with Blake Lively? And I think the interesting thing here too is, what if they're an A-lister and they're talking about this case,
right? And
they're talking about things that are relevant to this case. Essentially, under Blake Lively's position, they could preclude turning over those texts, which would be very interesting for the other side to see, to evaluate the case. So that could be a problem going forward.
Yeah, and it's kind of an ironic argument for the Lively side, I suppose, because they had no problem disclosing tons of texts. I didn't say that right.
Texas. That's Texas. Yeah, that's okay. That's all right.
Multiple texts between Nathan and Abel.
Right.
And so the PR people for Baldoni. And so their complaint is riddled with texts.
If you remember that our jury pool are people that keep us honest here with their comments and their questions. They actually have been asking, why doesn't Baldoni take the same tact and ask for all of her text messages? And so
it's coming.
What you're seeing here is what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So
adding fuel to the fire is the involvement of Taylor Swift, one of Blake Lively's closest friends. Reports suggest that Swift has quietly influenced the public narrative surrounding the case, using her considerable clout to rally support for Lively. This has only intensified tensions, with Baldoni's supporters accusing Lively and Swift of exploiting their celebrity status to manipulate media coverage.
Blake Heard is worried about some texts getting out there between her and her high-profile friends. And not just Taylor Swift, there are many other players involved for her and her husband, because Ryan Reynolds is also named in this lawsuit. Taylor Swift, but also Hugh Jackman, Emily Blunt, Gigi Hadid, a lot of A-listers and B-listers. And a lawyer for Team Delulu says there is a significant chance of irreparable harm if marginal conversations with high-profile individuals with no relevance to the case were to fall into wrong hands. Well, I would argue, and so would his lawyer, I think, that Taylor Swift's communications with her former dragon keeper are of high interest and relevancy to this case.
Ryan Reynolds has also become deeply involved in the conflict, reportedly leveraging his industry connections to exert pressure on key figures tied to the case. Some insiders suggest that Reynolds has adopted an aggressive approach toward Baldoni, actively working to isolate him within Hollywood and undermine his professional reputation.
Ryan was embroiled in the countersuit, with Justin accusing him of swearing and berating him in an aggressive tirade at a meeting at their New York penthouse, where it looks like Blake's wife was present to discuss Justin's conduct. He also claims that Ryan had tried to interfere with the movie script and force out the editors and the composer that he had hired in favor of professionals who had previously worked with him. Now, there are plenty of reactions on social media. Starlight writes, "When it comes to being in the public eye, there's a fine line between love and disrespect. I think it's more difficult to get that respect back once you've lost it than it is to get it in the first place." Another person writes, "Agreed, divorce will be next, and it will be revealed that Blake is frustrated with Ryan just taking out her troubles on Justin." I think it's interesting because these two got together in a sketchy way. I believe on Green Lantern, Ryan was cheating on Scarlett Johansson with Blake Lively, which quite a choice there. One person likes, "I always liked Ryan Reynolds, but with all this drama, I'm seeing him so much differently. He tries to come across as easygoing, funny, and a regular guy, and Blake is definitely not any of those things."
For his part, Baldoni has remained resolute, refusing to succumb to the growing pressure. His legal team, led by the formidable Brian Fredman, has been steadfast in exposing what they believe to be a coordinated effort to ruin Baldoni's career. During recent hearings, Fredman has argued that the lawsuit against Baldoni is less about seeking justice and more about silencing a powerful voice in the industry.
They shared illegally obtained text messages. They shared those together. They concocted a complaint that they filed with the Civil Rights Division. They omitted texts that would have provided context, texts that were in the exact same string that would have provided context of what was really going on. And in fact, they actually removed emojis from texts that show that there was satire and there was joking around by the PR crisis agents. I mean, the PR crisis agent was brought in because actually Blake Lively's publicist, Leslie Sloan, was planting stories negative to Justin. And all Justin wanted to do, and it's all through the text messages. If the New York Times apparently reviewed 1,000 or more pages of text messages, they would have seen it. Justin never wanted to hurt her, never wanted to be negative to her. He wanted to protect the film, he wanted to protect himself, and he wanted to protect her from making negative allegations about him that were made up.
A crucial aspect of the case centers on Blake Lively's push to secure extra legal protections for herself and her celebrity allies. Her attorneys have sought an attorney's eyes only designation for certain sensitive communications, a move that Baldoni's legal team vehemently opposes. Judge Lyman, who is overseeing the case, has voiced skepticism about this request, stressing the public's right to transparency.
Friedman did this whole thing. I don't see why this case is different just because it's a celebrity to switch the burden. There's already protection orders in place where they can go to court to make those requests and meet and confer. My concern is things get stamped attorney's eyes only on everything, and then we have to get the burden comes on us to go to the judge every single time on this issue, which it shouldn't be. And he's right. Basically, that's idea. Like if everything gets to be stamped attorney's eyes only on things that Blake's being careful of, and then if there's a question they can come, of course Blake's team would be like, nope, sorry. And then Team Justin's got to go to every time a judge, go to complain every single time. Whereas Friedman was making this point that it's like the burden should be on you. There is a place and already happening. If you want extra protection, go request it. You could come to us still, but go request it. And that way the burden is on them. And the way he explained it made so much sense. No?
Yeah, and I also want to add that even the judge made arguments against Lively's team by saying, like, you're trying to protect things from coming out in discovery, but because you have high-profile clients. But guess what? Public clients mean that there's going to be a public interest. And the reality is, if this goes to trial, which is what they're asking for, they want to take this to trial. If this goes to trial, these things will be made public regardless. So what is the point of concealing it now if it's going to be accessible to the public event?
The judge's reluctance to grant Lively's request has only intensified the drama, with legal experts speculating that the ruling could significantly impact the case's outcome. If denied, Lively and her team may be forced to face damaging revelations they had hoped to keep private.
I felt he was very fair. Like, I felt like he was very listening to both. He cut off Friedman at points, but it almost felt like, because he's like, I got you on that one. I know, for the sake of time, please move on. But what did you think of Lyman?
Yeah, I thought he was very fair. When Friedman was making his argument about how, like, well, they're trying to delay us from getting access to certain discovery because they want to keep it privileged. We didn't have that same privilege when the New York Times got the thousands of documents that they were claiming. And he said, 5 weeks of access, or 5 weeks advance access to these documents before the article even came out. And even the judge kind of came in and he's like, well, that has yet to be proven. We'll wait to see, how long that actually was. And so you can tell that he was kind of making counterpoints for both teams, but he was overwhelmingly, obviously, in support of, fighting back against the claims that Blake Lively's parties were arguing, because they just didn't have strong enough arguments. Like, they were really grasping at straws, and you can tell that the attorneys were even fumbling to make their arguments because even they know how ridiculous they are.
Beyond the courtroom, the battle has spilled into the media, with both sides executing strategic PR maneuvers. Lively and Reynolds have reportedly enlisted top-tier crisis management firms to shape the narrative, ensuring their perspective dominates mainstream coverage. Meanwhile, Baldoni has turned to independent journalists and online platforms to share his side of the story, aiming to counter what he views as biased reporting.
I feel like the person who planted this story went through the whole shopping list of different outlets they could plant this story in, or buy this story. I don't know. Things work in mysterious ways in the publication world, and especially I think when it comes to magazines like Star, which I find very unreliable, and but anyways, this story today is really bad for Baldoni. So here's the front page saying Justin Baldoni's dark past exposed, plus why Blake Lively won't stop fighting. And it says under here, it says that Justin Baldoni is preaching woke masculinity. But behind the scenes, he faced a bombshell accusation of racial discrimination and retaliation before his current scandal. So they're going for the racist card in this story here. Yeah, so first they start talking about how he has been going public about this TED Talk that he did about toxic masculinity.
While Baldoni is successful, he doesn't have the same financial resources as Lively and Reynolds, leaving the long-term viability of his legal battle in question. Some sources suggest that his team is already feeling the pressure. However, Baldoni remains determined, reportedly considering countersuits that could shift the tide in his favor against Lively and Reynolds.
And it's just disgusting when you go after someone, you try to destroy their life, and actually the evidence shows something different. Blake Lively was no victim here. She was in control, she was in power, and she took over this film.
So, for those who are not in the Hollywood world, what is wrong with her taking over the film? She's a big star. Her name is what made it. It's what got eyeballs on it. How unusual is it, as you allege in your lawsuit, to have an actress come in and start editing scenes, taking over the final cut, excluding the director from it? The director and 2 editors on the film, in exchanges that we have now that we'll be posting on MeghanKelly.com, are talking openly about how it's about to air, it's about to hit screens, and they haven't seen it because she appears to have wrested control from them. So how unusual is that?
I've never seen it before in my 30-plus year career in Hollywood.
Taylor Swift's involvement has added another layer of complexity, as her massive fan base has started weighing in on the case. Online discussions have exploded, with fans analyzing every detail and speculating on possible outcomes. Some have even drawn parallels to previous high-profile cases, arguing that the power dynamics at play make it challenging for Baldoni to receive a fair trial.
I want to believe that there are powerful attorneys, but I don't believe that they believe in their own case. I feel like they're like, shit, we have a job to do here, and Blake Lively is wringing our necks trying to get us to do this for her to protect Taylor Swift. But we have no case here, and we are desperately trying to protect her mental records, her mental health.
It was her privacy, her medical records, and her and they protect the communication that didn't need to be brought into discovery, like essentially the text messages with Taylor Swift, which was just rich considering they were trying to get 2.5 years of phone records from Baldoni's team, which they said was a bit of a stretch. And yet here Blake Lively's team is saying, oh, well, actually, you know, we don't want to make sure that any unrelated text messages get out.
And all I heard from Friedman was saying, celebrities are just like us. You don't get special privileges because you're a celebrity. You started this shit. Let's open the door. Let's let it all out here.
For now, the legal battle continues with no clear resolution in sight. With more hearings scheduled and new revelations on the horizon, the clash between these Hollywood heavyweights is far from over. What is certain, however, is that the outcome of this case will have lasting consequences, not only for those directly involved, but for the broader entertainment industry as a whole.
So I think we're already starting to see there be some separation that should this continue to go any further, they're all going to start to turn on each other.
Well, 100%. Like the theories that I'm hearing too, I'm curious from your sources, like from what I've heard, people are dying to be deposed because they're like, finally, I can speak because I'm being forced to under oath rather than having to do it and come out without, offending somebody. Go ahead. Make me depose, because then they're like, I can finally open up my mouth and say what I wanted to say. Have you heard that too?
I haven't heard that personally, but I think there's so many people that are dying to let the truth out finally, on both sides. People that really want to stand by Justin and people that really want to maybe finally let the truth out about the nefarious practices of this horrible industry.
Because the other one we're still learning about is Sony. Because it's like, when is Sony going to speak out? Will they be deposed? Are they going to be looking forward to being deposed? Dreading it?
This Giannetti.
She's in the middle, right? Both lawsuits use her as a way. Actually, thank you for reminding me. There was a moment where Brian seemed to slip and even said, like, there are third parties that didn't want to be mentioned, but Blake mentioned her 3 times. I won't say her name.
Whether Baldoni emerges victorious or faces financial ruin, one thing is certain. This is a Hollywood showdown like no other, with reputations, careers, and millions of dollars on the line.
They claim that Leslie Sloan, quote, worked for months to drop breadcrumbs and hints of sinister allegations to the public while secretly feeding defamatory falsehoods to any reporter who would listen, including Megan Towie of the New York Times. As a direct result of the Sloan parties and their co-conspirators, the Wayfarer parties have been damaged beyond measure. These are the facts underpinning the Wayfarer party's allegation against the Sloan parties, and this is what the evidence will prove at trial. The motion should be denied in its entirety, or in the alternative, the court should grant the Wayfarer parties leave to amend their first amended complaint and allow them to move forward with holding the Sloan parties to account for their part in Lively's malicious and calculated scheme.
As tensions rise and secrets are revealed, this high-stakes legal war shows no signs of slowing down. With reputations, fortunes, and friendships on the line, the drama is far from over. One thing is certain: Hollywood is watching, and the fallout will be unforgettable.
Lively has already publicized the alleged details of the so-called harassment in her amended complaint, spanning 138 pages and almost 500 paragraphs. Furthermore, any legitimate concern the Lively parties have concerning the disclosure of highly sensitive personal information can be addressed under the procedures contained in the court's model protective order. And this follows suit with what both sides argue today in court. Baldoni's team really honing in on how much of this case is already in the press, some of which they say is by Lively's own doing, but Lively's team pushing back for more restrictive measures to protect her. Now, of course, as I said earlier, we don't know exactly what the judge will decide. At the time of this recording, there has been no ruling, but we will keep you updated on this as soon as we know. But I'll tell you what else has been going on in this high-stakes legal drama? To catch you up on all the latest legal proceedings, both sides have suffered what could be considerable losses in the past week. Why? On Tuesday, the defamation suit that Justin Baldoni filed against the New York Times, it faced a setback when the judge essentially granted the Times a stay of discovery, an order that temporarily or indefinitely stopped the process of gathering evidence in the legal case.
We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. That wraps up today's video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.